Hello, good morning, everybody. All right, so we have a new sheet today on November 15th, density of objects. And since we've been working on measurements all week, I thought let's, instead of doing this lab right away, where we do the density of everything, let's look down here at calculations using the equation of density. So when we do density, we're going to be measuring mass, and we're going to be measuring volume, and you're going to be dividing the two. So density is defined as the mass, that is the number of particles, divided by how much the particles take up, how much space. All right, we'll talk more about particles in a second. The number of particles divided by the amount of space they take up. And since particles have mass, they take up. All right, so the number of particles, let's go up and look at some particles here. So the densities between solids, liquids, and gases depend on how many particles there are in a given amount of space. So notice that the volume here is 3 by 3. All we can see is the number of particles in an area instead of a volume. All right, so you can see that the difference in density depends on the difference of the number of particles that are in there in a solid, a liquid, and a gas. So we're talking about the density of objects in general, whether it's a solid, a liquid, or gas. So particles have a mass. Particles are the stuff in matter. Okay, particles are the stuff in matter. And they have mass. All right. So we'll talk more about the particle model of matter, but I think you already know that the world is made up at the atomic level of atoms. All right, so this is where the mass terms come in. How much space they take up is called the volume. All right, so let's go down and look again at this equation, that the calculations using the equation mass over volume, that ratio is called the density of a substance. And I know you know that word. All right, we can also rearrange density. All right, density equals mass over volume. All right, down. If we cross multiply, we see that density times volume, the density times the volume, equals the mass. All right. And the other thing is that the mass if we want to find the mass, all we have to do is multiply the density times the volume. And if we want to find the volume, we have to take the mass and divide by the density. All right? So that's 3 ways of writing this equation. If you haven't learned that in algebra, that's what you will be learning this year. All right, so there are 3 forms of this equation, that density equals mass over volume. Now, we have to be systematic about calculations in science. We don't throw numbers around on the page. All right, so what is the density of an object with a mass of this? So there's the mass, and a volume of 7.25 mils. Well, the equation for density is mass over volume. All right. Now we're just going to put the numbers because density is what we don't know, right? So the density equals the mass, 124.26 grams. We put the units there as well, and a volume of 7.25 milliliters. All right. Now we see we have two different units here, grams and milliliters. So grams divided by milliliters will be the unit of the answer. So that means the density equals, let's see if I can get this to work right. I want to be able to do this, but we may have to pull up my calculator, huh? Okay. All right. So the density is 124. And you don't get out your phones for this. We have a calculator on our computer. 124.26 divided by 7.25. Just the numbers that were given to us equals. All right.